What is the most expensive mistake you have ever made? Getting a DUI. On top of it being incredibly stupid, reckless, and dangerous, it ended up costing me $20,000 all said and done. If there's a silver lining, it's that first and foremost, nobody was hurt. I was simply pulled over by an observant police officer. And second, it woke me up to the fact that I'm the kind of person who just shouldn't drink alcohol. Things are much better now. Bought a 40-year-old house on 3 acres that was 3 feet above floodline of the century. 4 years later we had a 1,000-year flood. $160,000 so far to remodel. In cash, cause didn't have flood insurance. There was a leak from my bathroom upstairs to the kitchen right underneath it. Every time someone would shower, water would slowly begin to drip into the kitchen. I thought there was a leak somewhere in the drain pipe and I took the kitchen ceiling down looking for it. And this was an old home. So there was this cement type of plaster with metal lattice work through it on top of wood slats. It took forever to expose the drain pipe, only to find out that the little knob thing on the shower faucet that you pull up to turn on the shower had broken, and I just needed to replace that. That piece costs me $7. Then I had to completely replace my kitchen ceiling. I once trusted a person who said they needed cash to go to Boston to see a sick relative. I gave him $80 for a bus there and back. He shows up driving with a friend of his. I then realized he was scamming me. Confirmed the next day when his girlfriend called and said he was arrested and she needed money to go see him. She said that he said I was his only friend. Blah blah blah. And she asked for $100 to be money ordered to her. Blocked numbers. I only lost $80, but I learned a huge lesson in trust. I had no idea it was even an option to take classes at community college for the first year or two and then transfer into a 4-year university, have good grades, and standardized test scores, so I was under the impression that my only real choice was which university I wanted to attend the next year. Meanwhile my girlfriend went to community college for 2 years. Transferred to the same university and got a degree that looks exactly like mine for somewhere in the ballpark of $10 $20k cheaper. I ignored the oil light in my car until I blew a rod. Now I change my oil a little too often. I once bought 2 pizzas because they were 2 for 1, but when I checked the receipt I realized they had charged me full price for both. I have a sheltered life. When I built my first gaming PC back in 2005 I spent $800 plus on the CPU alone. It was probably something meant for workstations and serious multitasking. And I stupidly thought more expensive equals better. I could have had the same performance for gaming with something in the $200 $300 range most likely. About a year later I also spent $500 on a second video card to get SLE, which was a Rowley novelty at the time. The performance increase was super negligible and a giant waste of money. I will say though, seeing some of the other responses in here makes me feel slightly better about my mistake. When I was still in elementary school I ripped my braces off with pliers. They then refused to treat me and my almost straight teeth went back to being crooked. I earned a few academic scholarships out of high school but didn't know how to use them. I figured they would have been automatically applied, but I didn't start college right away, so my lack of understanding, preparation, and willingness to ask people in the know resulted in me losing a couple $1,000s toward my education. Rented a U-Haul to move from apartment to condo, same town, and bumped one of the balconies in the alley behind the condos. Put a very small dent in the canopy part of the truck. And when we returned the truck they told us, since we didn't get the insurance we would have to pay for the fix within 48 hours. They said that it would cost $4,800 to fix, and they refused to let me take it to a third-party mechanic for a quote. Then they said that, if we didn't pay within 48 hours, it would go to court where it would be doubled. I wasn't too well off then, financially, and maybe too naive, but we decided to pay to avoid having it doubled. My wife was in tears at the counter as she gave them her credit card. Frick U-Haul. They'll never get another penny from me the rest of my life. So far, an advanced degree in the US. Still hoping it pays off. I once stole UGR cards from Walmart. Well, tried to steal. Obviously I was caught. It cost my parents $800 in legal fees. I felt bad about it, and so I got a job. I paid my parents back $1,200+, an extra $400 just for the trouble. Spent $6,000 on App Store purchases when I was young. Not rearranging my room enough to play Gorn. And punching my $900 TV. Happened like 5 hours ago. Took a turn too quickly, lost control and wrecked a $50k luxury car. Still gotta pay around $10k in lawyer fees. I took out a loan and almost ruined my credit to buy an engagement ring for a girl who had apparently already replaced me. I made a killing in the crypto market when it spiked back in December. After I paid off debts, I reinvested about $4k back into the market as it began to drop. Of the $4k I invested, it's worth around $1,400 now. I plan on keeping it though. Maybe it will go back up. Maybe it won't. I'm okay with losing that money. This is one of those not me but comments, but it fits perfectly here. My fiance and I lived with his uncle when we were first starting out, and this dude was paranoid like no other. Few friends. Cash only. No banks. That whole mindset. He had a business partner of his mail him $10,000 cash once to avoid having to pay to have it wired or having to explain anything to the eyes. They'd done it before by vacuum sealing it to make it as flat as possible and hiding it in clothes whatever in a box. This time his partner got lazy and just vacuum sealed it, then slid the thing into a big cardboard envelope thing. Some slick postal employee must have known what to look for, because what got delivered was a cardboard envelope slit open up the side with a few blank papers stuffed inside. $10,000 untraceable dollars gone forever. I still wonder what the postal employee did with that. Hopefully took their partner out for a nice dinner and gave their kids a good Christmas. Not doing my taxes correctly. $25k in repayment/penalties/fees. Plus the amount we are paying for an attorney to get it all straightened out. Ugh. The most expensive mistake was buying a 1920s money pit house. It was architecturally interesting and loaded with attractive features. But the house was also constantly in need of expensive repairs and significant upkeep. There was always something going wrong or several things at the same time. It was a relentless money drain and we are thankful to have sold it. I converted a van into a RV so that my girlfriend and I could drive from Canada through the US to South America. I spent $15,000 and 3 years of my time. She broke up me last week. I don't think I want to travel alone. Getting married at 23, then divorced 13 years later. It's been 12 years since the divorce and I still have not recovered financially. To be fair, I also had my mom nearly die from a heart attack in there, and I got cancer at the same time. Life is tough, but you soldier on, right? My first job out of college, I worked as a developer at a small retail company's department. My team only consisted of myself, a lead developer and my boss, who also chipped in with the coding. Given our small size and flexibility requirements, I guess my manager didn't feel the need to burden us with strict protocols or safety procedures for testing and production deployment, as he trusted we were wise and responsible enough to do the right thing. Well, one day, when I had a small bug to fix on the website checkout page, I thought I could save some time cutting corners. It was an obvious fix, and only a single line JavaScript update. So rather than go through the typical flow of testing locally, committing changes to the repository, then deploying to the production server and finally testing again on the live website, I figured I could get away with updating the live production code first thing, just to get the fix out there, because thoroughly testing would be a waste of time. Well, it turns out that even a single line update is not immune to the possibility of introducing a typo. That typo ended up breaking the JavaScript on the page, thus rendering the checkout button non-functional. It wasn't until almost noon the next day that one of the sales representatives noticed we hadn't received any online orders for almost 24 hours. If only one of the customers had called the problem in sooner. By the time I discovered the checkout button wasn't working and corrected the error, the estimated loss of sales was placed at approximately $40,000. In the end, I got a RIT-warning and my boss finally decided to implement a formal deployment procedure that involved management approval before any production server updates. I value it as a crucial lesson learned. There's no change too small to warrant testing, because even the simplest thing I do is vulnerable to bumblefuckery. Got married to a manipulative mute who leached as much as he could. He is now blocked and long gone. Glad I got out when I did. Trading in a car that had low miles and was paid for a Porsche 944. Piece of crap doesn't even begin to describe this thing. And every part for it was 3-4 times more expensive than a normal car part. Playing League of Legends. I'm not sure why I did this, but I suppose it's because I was pretty lonely at the time. I started talking to a guy online who was in a nearby city, Melbourne, 400 kilometers away, the closest city around my area, mind you. We got along well, but then he told me he's from North Queensland, which is like 2,000 kilometers away from where I live. He was down in Melbourne with his family and was driving back up to his hometown in a week or two. We talked the whole time he traveled up north. I think it took around 3 days before he got to Brisbane, which is a few 100 kilometers south of his town. By this point I was falling pretty hard for him, and out of the blue he asked me if I wanted to fly up to Brisbane and stay in the hotel he was staying at once his family had left. I gave it a lot of thought, stalked every little detail of his Facebook and Insta account to make sure he was legit, and eventually agreed to fly up and stay with him for a week. It cost around $350 for the flights, which was surprisingly cheap for the distance. But here's the thing. I was on student welfare at the time, so only had $100 left and didn't get paid for another 2 weeks. I thought, alright, I can do with $100. I'm sure he'll buy me dinner since I've made the effort to come see him. I should also mention that I lied to him early on and said I have a job on a fishing boat with my brother, which I have worked on a few times, but it's nothing stable, so not really a job. Ended up missing my plane due to waiting for my phone to charge in a shopping center so I could transfer some money over to get a skybus to the airport. $20. There was a traffic jam on the freeway in Melbourne, so I had to pay an extra $50 to get the next flight in the morning. Great. When I finally got to Brisbane, I legit had around $50 left after having to catch a $20 train from the airport to the city. And the first night I was there he asked me to pay for dinner. I said no, he can, since I came up here, lol. I didn't want to lose my pride about being poor and ended up calling dad to borrow me some money. He put $50 in my account, which I was so grateful for, as at this point in time I was seriously beginning to stress out. I ended up running out of money on the third day and made a lie up about how I was waiting for my employer to transfer my paycheck into my account. I don't think he was very happy having to pay for my meals, but he did say something along the lines of, if I didn't care about you, I wouldn't be paying for you, after I made a fuss over it. Anyway, on the last day I had to get up early to go to the airport, which was a 3-hour walk away, and there was no way I was going to ask for money for an Uber or make it in time by walking. Somehow I managed to use PayPal to go into the negatives and order an Uber to the train station and a train ticket to the airport. When I arrived in Melbourne I couldn't afford a skybus, so I walked to the closest suburb near the airport and caught a city bus and then train to the train station using my Mikey card, which somehow still had money on it from a few years back. TL. Doctor, don't travel across the country to meet up with a guy you've never met, especially when you have no money and live off welfare. I bought a Saab 9.3. I paid $2K for it from my lab partner. It was a high mileage car, but my god, it was fun to drive. For the first 5 or 6 weeks I owned it. Then it blew a coil pack. At the time I didn't know that was what happened, but the mechanic figured out what I should have known to check. They wanted to charge me $800 for the part. I found one on eBay, had it shipped overnight for a total of $196, then installed it for $200. Found out later the install process involved a grand total of unscrewing 4 bolts, snapping the part into place, and screwing them back in. Doctor of motors in Chico can eat crap. Slimeball business with predatory service advisors. Then it blew another coil pack. Then it blew a crankshaft sensor. Then another coil pack. Then another. Add another miscellaneous engine components along the way, plus brakes, and a few ruptured brake lines. I don't remember what it was at this point, but I remember spending all day removing a manifold to change some tiny, cheap little part that was essential to operations. Except for the first instance I did all the work myself. No way I could afford the prices of a European car repair shop. Each time I bought a coil pack they were more expensive. Last one was about $300. All in 2 years I dumped about $2,500 $3,000 into a $2,000 car. Lesson learned. Though I wouldn't say all the money was a complete waste. Some of that $2.50 $3K were the tools I still own now, and have come in handy since. Children. I work as a graphic designer. My main job during the year is getting product catalogs ready for print/mailing. We usually print just shy of 100,000 catalogs a year, which comes out to $80K or so every year, without fail. With as much preparation and comb through, I always make at least one mistake, which haunts me the entire year. Grew up with too much HGTV. Bought a fixer-upper estimating I could refinish the entire house for $15K if I did everything myself. It's a 100 years old house, and I'm afraid of saws. Let's all laugh for a minute. My first car, a gas guzzler, maybe $22,000 with a high interest rate. I thought $400 a month was affordable, but I was not counting insurance and gas. Those three factors altogether totaled up to over $800. I feel like that bad purchase informed my financial situation for years, but I now owe less than $3,000 on it, and it will be paid off in about a year. Dad passed away. I was given his house 2+ hours away while wife and I had a newborn and were working full time. Let lifelong friend move in for monthly rent and he actually helped fix up the house and keep it in good condition. His GF started staying the night once in a while at the house, then more often. Him and GF had falling out. He left and stopped paying rent as we discussed. I sent family over to check on the house. Someone's living there. I check on house that weekend. It's my friend's now ex-GF living there. She asks for 1 week to move all her stuff out that I didn't even know was there. I had my new family in the car with me and was not prepared for having to remove someone and all their stuff, so I said okay. I was to come back the following weekend when my schedule allowed and she would be gone. Well, this final week let her have a full 30 days living at my house, and she had proof. So she was now a resident and needed a full legal eviction to get her out of my house. When you're involved in an eviction, there's all sorts of help and organizations and websites for the person living at the house to get answers. For the landlord evicting the tenant, I found almost nil. Had to pay a crap ton of money and had to drive to the county courthouse 2+ hours away like 6-8 times over the next 2 months to get her out of my dad's house. During this time, I was not allowed to enter the house. I set up cameras on the neighbor's property with their permission, attempting record damage to the house. Parties. Theft of my property still at the residence. Didn't get jack squat. She did about $40K damage to the home. Still a lot of my dad's belongings that were hidden in the attic and cost me an insane amount of time. Well, really I did this to myself by letting my friend move in. Took almost 2 full years of going across the state every weekend to work on the house. I guess I can pay more money to go after her for the damages to the house. But she was living off illegal means and state aid during this whole process and would never be able to pay me back. One final kicker. The house was heated via fuel oil in Michigan, and we have cold winters. This bitch ran out of fuel oil in late December, and she didn't have $150 needed to get a fuel oil delivery. You have to order a minimum amount to get them to drive out to your house and put fuel oil in your tank. She used electric heaters and had several of them running all winter to compensate. Because she was on state aid or some crap, the company couldn't shut off her power in middle of winter. So she racked up an average of $1.700 a month in electric bills over the winter. When I went to put the power back in my name, I was told that I have to pay her $6.300 balance before the power could be restored. This was because I didn't set up some landlord program with the power company in the first place. This took another 3 months or so, and a couple hundred to a lawyer, to get straightened out. Woo, I feel better. I think I made this long as hell so no one actually reads it. It's like I'm mad at her and myself all over again. Anyways, house is fixed up and sold now for less than half the profit we originally anticipated. Jesus, I lost so much money. I read it as most expensive milkshakes and was so excited. Dated a guy who seemed great. Moved in together. He then decided his job was boring so he quit. I spent years paying almost all the rent, paying his car insurance, buying the groceries, paying the majority of the bills, etc. while he did whatever he wanted. I don't even want to know how much I wasted on him. I'm just glad to be rid of him. And because everyone asks, I paid his car insurance and bills, so he wouldn't have an excuse to not look for work. I paid for groceries because I still had to eat. He was responsible for anything he wanted that I didn't eat. And I paid the rent because my landlady was so sweet and kind. And I didn't want her or her family to suffer because my crappy ex didn't feel like paying his half that month. Start smoking. Cut it of 3 years now, but was smoking for 5 years. Marrying my ex-husband. He controlled all our finances. My paycheck went into one pot. So of course that meant he could spend how we were doing any which way he wanted. On top of that, all the stupid cars he kept buying. Losing the house, not getting my full half because he kept it. All the expensive electronics. Giving his family money every month. Not investing in my own 401k and not getting half of his. Losing out on the supposed mutual fund that existed. Still not sure it did. But I don't know where that money went. And of course the divorce expenses and cost of therapy after. Not to mention the money I gave him to help him during the divorce. I didn't properly secure a B2 after it landed. And a freak, not quite a tornado, but close enough, smashed it into the side of a B-52 Stratofortress. Essentially clipping one of the wings of the B-52 and totaling the B2. Civil union with my alcoholic ex. In fact, the whole goddamn septic clusterfuck of a relationship cost me well over $100,000 and counting. At least I'm in a far better place with a wonderful partner now. Still recovering financially. My coworker and I were offered $600 each to take a later flight. We talked about it and decided it would be too disruptive to the business trip. An hour later, standing in line to board the first flight, we got texts saying our second flight was delayed 5 hours. Got a Discover card at 21 and told myself I'll only use it for emergencies. And then I don't think I quite properly defined what emergencies were to myself. It was my second try to get my driving license back in Spain. Everything went well apparently. I was asked to park the car, so I parked it in a huge space. It was in front of a garage door, so I thought I'll move it backwards a bit. Little by little, I suddenly heard a huge thud. I hit the back car. Funniest thing, that garage door was unused, and I cold left the car there, and that was the end of the test. But of course, I failed. Now, I don't know about other countries, but in Spain, at least my region, there's no tests in August, and this was right before that. So I had to keep going to driving lessons for a month. Failed a third time, until I passed at the fourth try, and in total I spent like 1,000 euros more than what I should. I'll always remember this. Buying another bag of heroin. The guy who shot me up missed the vein, so I thought I'd go get another bag. Well, that bag caused me to overdose. It's really expensive to ride in an ambulance, stay in the ICU for 5 days, go to detox, and then rehab. But I'm still alive, and coming up on a year clean. Law school. I misread a blueprint, and ordered $90,000 worth of material the wrong size once. We were able to use it later, but I was crapping my pants for a little while. Took a buyer at a large corporation at her word when she claimed she needed a bunch of parts ASAP and she would get us a PO as soon as possible. We ordered a $150,000 mil run of stainless steel. That material is still sitting in our parking lot almost 2 years later. We don't take buyers at their word anymore. I got into a car accident when driving for like 8 hours. I was tailgating and got brake checked. I had to pay over $2,000 for the front bumper my car and insurance paid for their damages. I had to call my mother about the accident and got disowned for like month or two. Swore I wanted to go to a film school out of high school. Applied to Full Sail in Orlando, Florida. They require half of the tuition upfront, $22,000. I went for a tour of the school and was dazzled by the cool neon lights and film sets. I look out alone with Sally me and began school. After the second semester I realized it wasn't for me. While it is a bachelor's degree, it's not like you can change your major and readjust to your newly realized interests. I ended up miserable and dropping out in the first days of the second semester. I still owed $22,000 regardless if I dropped out or not. I decided to drop now and save myself from spending another $22,000 in the second year to rub salt in the wound. Absolutely none of the credits earned at Full Sail were eligible to transfer to other universities. $22,000 and nothing to show for it. That was 10 years ago, and I finished paying off the loan, thank God. I joined the military and worked hard to pay off that loan. I took advantage of education benefits and worked on an actual bachelor's degree, graduated, and then completed a master's program from a great university in Florida near where I was stationed. I've got a great job now doing something I love. I've redeemed myself, but it was certainly a learning experience. Financially, high stakes poker. I estimate in the $300K range. Emotionally, losing my girlfriend of 4 years because I wasn't driven enough to keep her interest. Financial losses are very hard to get over, but losing someone you imagined would be there forever is the absolute hardest thing I have ever / continue to go through. When I was in high school, my boyfriend from a different school and I made an agreement to go to each other's proms. We'd each pay for everything for our own prom, then figure the difference out after. My dumbass thought it was a great idea until he broke up with me after my prom, which was a few weeks before his. I'm still out $140 that he said he'd pay me back. Frick you, Dakota. Wired $23K to a company that hacked the emails of a customer I work with a lot and changed the bank information on the invoice. Bang on. I got addicted to drugs. To date, I estimate I have spent over $100K on substances, not to mention the insane cost of 4 stints in inpatient rehabs and a multitude of psychiatric hospitals. Well, at least I don't have all that much money tied up in student loans. Silver linings. Sold my 16 bitcoins a few years ago. SMH. In the 4th grade another student wanted to buy my Gamma Boy Advance off of me for $100. I had an extra one, since my sister had one. Never used it, and give it to me. Thinking sweet I can make an easy $100, I took his offer. The next day, I bring the Gamma Boy and he says, hey, let me test it out first. I want to make sure it works. I'll play it in class. We had different classes. Naive me give him the Gamma Boy without taking any collateral. That friker never paid me and stole my Gamma Boy. In my first job out of university, I was lucky to be part of a successful startup and became rich on paper. My dad told me to cash out and buy an apartment for myself. I refused because I was oh so amazingly clever and soon lost $6 million when the company crashed on the stock market. I was left with nothing. I should have listened to my dad.